So it actually brings me to a conspiracy theory that I have that I'd love to share.
Oh boy.
So you remember last year's draft? I know you do. 2021 NBA draft. Knicks had 2 draft picks. It was the 19th pick and the 21st pick. We saw the reports. We knew they were interested in a player like Chris Duarte. To me, and I know to you as well, the Knicks were never using 2 picks in the draft. It was not going to happen. They were going to deal something. So here's the first thing. Let's look at the cap holds for 4 picks. And mind you, these cap holds are going to be taking place in 2025.
Hold on.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be insane, isn't it?
It might be, but who cares?
Andrew's nodding. Okay, continue. I'm sorry.
Listen, it might be, again, I said it's a conspiracy theory. It might be absolutely ludicrous. And you might be like, again, this is just never going to happen. Or you might walk away being like, okay, he has a convincing.
Listen, what every other one of these, you're like, you know what? The madman has done it again. Okay, so I'm with you. So we have the cap holds for the 12th, 19th, 21st, and 25th. Great.
Okay. I can't wait. Let's go. Jeremy.
So the 12th pick cap hold. Why is that significant? Again, the Knicks had interest in Chris Duarte. Where did Duarte get drafted? 13th. So I'm assuming that the lowest place that the Knicks had to leapfrog the Pacers to get Duarte would have been 12th. And by packaging 19 and 21, they would have gone and gotten Duarte, and his cap hold in 2025
for about $10 million less.
Would be 17.9. Yes. And the cap holds for the 19th pick and the 21st pick would have been a combined 27.5. Yeah. And then you look at the 2021 25th pick. That's where Quentin Grimes was drafted. That's 12.9. So, I mean, we're looking at a difference of almost $15 million between the 25th pick and both the 19th and the 21st pick. Now, I know that a lot of people seem to have this impression of the Knicks trading that 19th pick out and in terms of what they got back. And look, I would love to have been a fly in the room. Here's merely my theory, and I will let you have at it. I think that the Knicks realized that they could not package both picks. And so what they did was they said, we don't love the offers that we have, but let's do it. It wasn't so much a panic move. It was like, honestly, this is a better option than before. So they traded the 19th pick to the Charlotte Hornets and got a protected pick back. They didn't want the pick to convey, and the Hornets were a little concerned about how they would do, and rightfully so, as that pick stays protected this year. I mean, Knicks don't even own it, but that's the point. The Knicks said this asset is better down the line. That I think we've all agreed upon.
Yes.
But then it's, well, what happened to the asset? It was traded along with Kevin Knox for Cam Reddish. And the Cam Reddish trade says 2 things to me. Number one, the Knicks realized that they desperately needed more length. They needed a guy like Cam, and that was very much exposed by the lack of versatility at the 3 spot and all these things. But it wasn't maybe that they had their eye on Cam Reddish to such a point where they want to continue with him forever. And that brings the second point, which is, what if the Knicks felt that they could get more value out of Cam Reddish as a trade asset this summer than they would if they had had the Hornets pick, because the volatility of when that might convey was so tricky that, maybe that pick eventually becomes 2 seconds. I still think it will convey before then. It will be a first, but maybe it does. Maybe the pick winds up being 15th overall, 16th overall. Do you bet more on the upside for Cam Reddish, even as he enters his next contract? Or do you bet more on a rookie scale contract for a guy who's picked 16th?
I'm with you so far. I think this checks out so far. Okay. Right. So they thought Cam would have higher Reddish than the first. Okay. Keep going. Right.
So again, by kicking the can down the road, Knicks saved 2025 money because we're eliminating one of the cap holds and whatnot. And then here's the thought, right? Like, if Reddish is going to be paid in 2023, which he would be, the expectation is he would be under contract in 2025, because they wouldn't sign him to a 2-year deal and then he's expired. Yeah. That would just be poor business. And he's likely earning, I know he had not the best season this year, but you'd have to think that a player like him would be earning more than the $14.6 million difference between the 19th and the 21st cap holds and the 25th cap hold.
Cam is either going to be a minimum player fighting for a contract, or is going to make something in excess of $14.6 million. So yes, I would agree that he would earn more if he continues to progress, would earn more than the difference between those picks. Yes.
And look at the last two big clutch guys, right? Lonzo Ball didn't sign an extension. He did a pretty good job getting paid. Miles Bridges is going to get paid heavily. So there's something to be said of like, even when you see these markets, that they're teams that might be like, you know what? We don't get big free agents. Let's throw Cam Reddish $18 million a year because we're happy to do it. And if worst case scenario, like he's a rotation player with the salary cap, we're fine with that. Like a team like Detroit, a team like Orlando, whatever it might be, just as an example.
He needs to play and look decent, but
he does.
Sure.
The question is, will he even get that opportunity to do that in New York?
We'll find out. Well, keep going.
Because moving Cam Reddish this year, before he enters restricted free agency, and you have this, weird timeline of like paying him and not and all that. Like, do you package him in a deal with your pick this year as an attempt to move up? Because if you're the Knicks and you say, again, Cam Reddish and this year's pick is a better offer in their mind than say that Hornets pick and this year's first. Again, I don't know, but I think that's at least the train of thought where that Hornets pick could be anything, but it could also be 2 second rounders and it could convey years from now. Cam Reddish is Cam Reddish. The hope is the upside. And you also hope that a player will at least net you something. Or another example, we know that the Knicks were considering and close to final. Well, I don't know if I should say close to finalizing, but they were very much in deep conversation about flipping Alec Burks and Cam Reddish to the Lakers as part of a 3-team deal that would have, what they were hoping to do was net them 2 second-round picks, which again, it goes back to the theory of that Hornets pick was the best they felt they could do. Wasn't so much a panic move, if you want to call it, whatever. I don't want to quibble. And then you basically get Cam instead, and then you change out Cam to a team like the Lakers that loves clutch clients and can sell it on a future with Cam. And then you use that asset to try to build up and trade up in the draft, which, if you remember from the whole superstar conversation, what was the very first thing that I had mentioned, John?
You could draft a superstar.
You could draft a superstar.
Could we just add, I don't, unless you know some reporting that I've forgotten, aren't we at least led to believe that the reason that trade did not go down is because the Knicks were pushing for more / better draft compensation? So in theory, instead of pushing for 2 seconds, the reason the trade may not have happened is because maybe the Knicks held firm at we want a first in this trade.
Potentially, but also based on the fact that, again, as I've said before, the contracts that are potentially expiring deals, they are all more favorable as potentially expiring deals than they were last season when we were in the thick of it, when things seemed worse. Like, yeah, now when you look at the free agent market, because pieces move a lot more freely over the summer, and I'm sure the Knicks felt that they could revisit this and get something similar, because now the Lakers are, for example, dealing with a situation where they have to get Russell Westbrook off. So that's the thing. Again, if you look at where the Knicks are positioned, and then if they do trade up, if they trade Reddish and their 11th pick, let's say the Kings, they're picking 7th. They have very few wings on their team. They have alienated Dante DiVincenzo due to the fact of how they basically didn't play him. And he's saying that they have screwed him out of potential earnings because they've diminished.
Oh, is that a thing? I haven't even paid attention. Oh, wow. Okay.
So again, if you're the Kings, you're like, well, this is a sticky situation. We will probably retain him, but we need more wings to begin with. And you can sell me on Cam Reddish. And we get the 11th pick, and all we have to do is trade down 4 spots. Like, that's something that really appeals to us. Sure, we could do that. And then if you're the Knicks, maybe you have the 7th pick now. Maybe you see a player with a superstar ceiling or even a star ceiling, because again, you're focusing on the timeline of the younger core and how you can best build around that. And it would also save you money in 2025, because if Cam Reddish is being traded and replaced by a 2022 prospect, they're going to be on their rookie contract through 2025. And you're probably, if the pick is between 5 and 15, hypothetically, again, I know the Knicks are likely picking 11th based on the lottery odds, and they can't even fall to 15. But even if we take that scenario, that player is going to earn between $6 and $10 million in 2025. And if we just talked about Cam Reddish potentially earning more than $14.6 million, and this is what, the second year into his deal, third year into his deal, we're probably looking at a guy who would potentially be earning $18 million just based on the nature of the contract. So you're saving money and you're investing maybe in players that you prefer more. And that's the philosophy of like, where you could get there. But I want to take a pause because I have more, but I just want to kick it back to you because I know I've been talking about this for a bit.
No, I'm not sure if I'm all in on the 2025 conspiracy theory. I appreciate it and I get it, and I don't think it's completely nuts but I'm going to go a little bit more, I guess, macro and say keeping Cam around definitely goes. That is one road that they could take, which will entail certain things. The first of which is paying Cam. If presuming he does well, you're either then then we flip him at the deadline, which okay, I guess you could do that, or you pay him next summer. I could absolutely see a world where they are looking to move on from Cam this summer for all of the reasons we've already talked about, involving roster crunch. And if it serves two masters, this being the other one, then, all the better. It would, and it's like RJ Barrett, Evan Fournier, Quentin Grimes, those none of those three players are going anywhere. And those three players are going to, RJ Barrett's playing all the minutes he can handle. Evan Fournier just averaged 28, 30 minutes a game. We know Tibbs likes to play Quentin Grimes. We've already kind of touched on the fact that we don't necessarily think of Cam as a full-time backup four. Maybe I'd love to be proven wrong, but like if there is a guy of the quote unquote young core that all the signs are pointing to, like, yeah, this guy might be on the move this summer, it is unquestionably Cam before anybody else.
I think it should. At least I think that's the direction that they would go in. But I want to take a quick step back and actually talk about Brock Aller.
Of course.
So here's the thing. When Brock Aller was with the Cavaliers, there were 4 contracts that were of note. Basically, the way that the Cavs have typically operated was, let's just extend beforehand so these guys don't hit free agency, so we don't have to worry about sign and trade situations or money or what. Let's pay him, and then we have the team control. So Kevin Love, right? But what's interesting about Kevin Love's contract, as with these other players as well, is it wasn't a standard ascending contract, right? The structure was ABBA, 31 million, 28 million, 28 million, 31 million. Jordan Clarkson, similar. It was ascending and descending as well, but it was like ABAC, 12.5, 11 something, 12.5, 13 something. But to keep in mind, Clarkson was extended by the Lakers, not the Cavaliers. But then you got 2 contracts that really stand out to me, and it's Cedi Osman and Larry Nance Jr. Both of them were signed to contracts that descended in terms of the raises that a player could earn. The last year of Osman's was actually non-guaranteed. Okay. And so these are 2 guys on their second contracts where the amounts are just, they're declining. And then you look at the Knicks and you look at what they did last year, right? It was extending Julius Randle, bringing in Evan Fournier, re-signing Derrick Rose, getting Alec Burks to re-sign, bringing in Kemba Walker, and re-signing Nerlens Noel. All of those contracts were ascending, which is very different from what the Cavs were doing. And granted, some of these players had a player option, specifically Julius Randle, and several of these players had a team option. All of them not named Julius Randle and Kemba Walker. But where it's fascinating is that these were not second contracts. These were third or fourth contracts for a lot of these guys, maybe even more, like if you're Derrick Rose. And so it's fascinating to me when I see the young core, how the Knicks might operate in terms of signing or re-signing these players when the time comes, and how that will impact 2025, which is when we seem to think that there might be more players available.
So you're thinking we're going to see some descending contracts?
Potentially. Well, here's the thing. We're probably not going to see descending contract for RJ. It might be ascending, but it also might be stagnant, right? Like, I know you've talked about $30 million a year. It could just be 30 million across the board. There could be some funky math that goes on where it decreases and increases and whatever. They could be creative, as we just saw, like ABBA structure.
And again, you know what that would get me to say? Mamma mia. ABBA.
Oh, but yes. Okay. There we go. Yep. Sorry. Took me a second. That was good.
Absolutely.
That was good.
No sales job here.
Here you go again. My. Ascending
Take a chance on me, Jeremy, please.
That's true. And then we go back to the conversation of trading Reddish. Maybe that happens. But then it's also for Obi and Emmanuel Quickley. Maybe when they get paid, it's descending raises. The same thing where we're looking at clearing more money later. And if structured properly, the Knicks can have their cake and eat it too. So let's assume very quickly, just again, I'm not saying this will happen. I just want to create a scenario.
Throwing it out there. Just having some fun.
Trade Julius Randle.
This summer.
They find a way to get Jalen Brunson 4 years, $100 million. Again, I don't even think Jalen Brunson will get $100 million. He might. He could also get 90. I want to create a world in which there is more money operating with than less. And let's say they extend RJ to 4 years, $120 million. Toppin gets, 4 years, 77. Reddish, 470. Quickly, 470. And then Mitchell Robinson gets 4 years and $49 million. And this
obviously
is assuming
they can't,
Reddish stays.
They can't extend some of these guys this summer. You're talking about within the next year or so. Yeah.
Yes. This summer, next summer, both those years. And then don't factor in these things, right? Future first round picks, Jericho Sims, Deuce McBride, Rokas Jokubaitis. Just kind of let's stick to the more meat of it all.
Okay.
So let's look at the ascending with the money that we had in consideration, right? It gives you almost $20 million to spend if you keep Quentin Grimes on the books, because his cap hold, as we talked about, is about $12.9 million. But then you also have to factor in the possibility of the 4 additional first round picks between 2023 and 2025. It'll shrink it a bit. But like here, there's an estimation of the salary cap. This was reported. Maybe it stays true, maybe it doesn't, but just going off of this number, $171 million in the 2025-26 season. So it's worth noting that if we did ascending contracts for all of these players, that the Knicks still only have like $20 million to spend in a year where like they either have to go big or it's a problem.
The first year max, just so we're all on the same page. So I forget how many years of service those players that we talked about would have, but they're all going to be either in the 7 to 9 or the 10 plus range, right?
Yes, exactly.
So that's either 30 or 35% of the cap. 30% of $171 million is 51.
51.3.
Yeah. So you're talking about a first year max starting at $50 million, which is obviously a lot more than $19 million.
Right. Which means you have to execute a sign and trade. You have to do it or else it's not going to work. But what if we did it differently? What if we had these players making the same exact money that I just mentioned, but on descending deals outside of RJ, who would be stagnant? And again, the reason RJ would be not descending is because it would mean he's earning more than the max that he would be allowed to earn, which obviously can't happen. So
if we want to keep him at 30 a year.
Right.
Yeah.
So again, we just opened up $7.2 million in cap space just by doing descending contracts and RJ Barrett having a 0% raise across the board every single year.
I just noticed how much you're paying Toppin and Quickly. You're paying those boys a lot of money.
Again, but it's similar to the conversation we had before, just altering it here. Like if Obi Toppin is starting and he's playing well, like maybe he does make 4 years, $77 million. John Collins just made 5 years, $125 million. If Emmanuel Quickley, again, but that's also the thing I'm saying. I'm trying to so
you're overshooting it. Okay.
Right. Just as an example of how we can do that. So just by the descending, we've done well here. What if we now do the descending factors, except for RJ, where it's stagnant at 0%, and we traded Cam Reddish? That's $13.3 million more that we did. And by the way, again, factoring in the 7th pick overall in 2022, because this is the scenario I'm saying, where Cam Reddish in 11 for 7, hypothetically, of course.
Okay.
Now we're at $40.2 million in cap space.
Not bad.
It's not bad. It's just under where we need to be for the 0 to 6 years. That's more restricted free agents, so that's not necessarily going to happen. But it's also not too far away from the max that we're saying for the 7 to 9 year guys. Or even still, if you needed to get much further to get to the 10 plus year players who are earning 35%, you could do that, right? Like we're talking about Jalen Brunson making 4 years, $100 million. If he's making $90 million on a descending contract, you could probably shave $2 to $3 million off of the amount. And that's more to work with. If Quickly and Toppin aren't making the amounts that I listed, that's more to work with too. Like there's even something to be said, as wild as this is. And I know it would make a lot of people angry, and me too. But here's a thought, John. What if the Knicks don't move Julius Randle, as we talked about last time? And what if they have Obi coming off the bench, but in a greater capacity than he did? Again, I still don't see how they can make it work. But play along.
Let's go with it. Sure.
And basically, Obi is in a smaller role, and then after his third year, the Knicks come a knocking and say, "Listen, we want to extend you." And then they basically try to catch lightning in a bottle by suppressing the amount that he has. It's not an avenue I want to go down. I would rather do this. And I think they should do this.
I think if Obi Toppin I think if Julius Randle and Obi Toppin are both on this roster to start next season, one of them will be off of it by the trade deadline.
Yeah, sure. Again, I think it's not the way to go. I would not do it that way. But like, if you're talking about suppressing a player's value and then signing them, or at least hoping to, maybe Obi even says, I want to bounce. I want to try to prove myself, and it's just a business, and they do that and they don't extend him. But this is what I'm going at. Or
I mean, I think
Robinson, maybe he doesn't, maybe there's a team option and the Knicks decline it and they find another player that they could sign. Or draft. Maybe Jalen Brunson has a team option and they decline that and they open up more money. The point
I think it could be simpler. Like RJ, Toppin, Quickly, Brunson. If you want to throw in Grimes too, that's fine. Like if that's your core and you want to pay for all those guys, you could finagle it so that by 2025 you could have real money to spend if you want.
And that's the exact point of the exercise and this whole conspiracy theory, finding ways to open up where, look at what the Warriors did. They had one of the best teams we've ever seen, the best regular season team we have ever seen. They had cap space. Why? Because of Steph Curry and his ankle situation and them capitalizing on that. And because the salary cap jumped so much that they could basically just say goodbye to Harrison Barnes for nothing and use Kevin Durant and sign him with that money. That is essentially what you are trying to replicate, but not being that 2016-17 Golden State Warriors, because the Knicks won't be that level of talent.
So a couple things. One, I think if Leon Rose doesn't have a superstar, let me rephrase that. If Leon Rose does not have another star, because I'll call RJ a star. He's a star in the making. He's getting there. If he does not have another star on the roster, I'm certainly not talking about Julius Randle. He will not make it to 2025 if he doesn't get. And I don't think Brunson's going to be enough either. I think he needs to get a name on the roster, and I don't know. Does he need to do it in the next year? Does he need to do it in the next 2 years? I don't know. But I know he ain't making it to 2025 if the names that we're looking at on this cap. This is my 2 cents. I don't say I know. I assume. That's my assumption. I might be wrong. So if we operate under that presupposition, it doesn't throw all this out the window. But I wonder if he got a star here, a sub-star, right? How patient would that person be? Would they be patient enough to say, all right, you're gonna do your thing, and let's say they trade for this person next summer, right? Let's say or maybe even at the trade deadline, this upcoming year. Like, would that person be patient enough, if that is the direction they went, to be like, we're going to try to do our thing here for the next 2 years, and then we will go after it in 2025 at the very latest, with the acknowledgement that, like, hey, maybe we make a trade before then, or whatever the case may be. That's my only thing that I would throw in there.
And I hear you, but then couldn't that be said of like getting a player who does well from the draft? Like that 7th pick overall, for example. That's
the wild card. If they can land a guy, a real guy in the draft, and like, I haven't really dove into this draft as much as I would have liked to, but I think I've dove in enough to say that even moving up from 11 to 7, like the odds that they get someone, unless they get, You want to know the wild card over this whole freaking conversation? Crazy enough, is a guy that hasn't played basketball or organized basketball. Shaedon Sharpe.
Yes,
that's the guy, and that's where moving up from 11 to 7, you're probably going to need to move up from 11 to 7 to get that dude. Maybe they go all in on Shaedon Sharpe and they say that we are placing our chip on him, and we think that he is going to be the guy who attracts whoever, in a couple of years.
And that's similar to what I had in mind. Like, that is the player when I was doing this, like, star ceiling. It was Shaedon Sharpe.
When are you ever going to see a situation like this again, where a guy who was rumored to go, or not rumored to go, rumored to be the number one prospect, or no, he was the number one prospect in his class before he reclassified, be able to get that guy in the mid to late lottery? Like, that doesn't really happen, I feel like.
It doesn't, but it's that. And it's also, if you're the Knicks, let's say you get from 11 to 7, if you really found a way to get from 7 to 5 and a player like Jaden Ivey is on the board, like,
well, he's not going to.
But I'm just
4, but
anything can happen.
3.
Okay, but we're splitting hairs.
No, crazy shit happens.
If it falls, the Knicks can do something. Like, that is my point. Where if you jump twice, because jumping once from 11 to top 5 is impossible. It just doesn't happen. That is that's the argument against trading for a star, where you're not trading all of the. Again, it's unproven talent versus proven talent, but the difference there is like, if you think that a guy like Shaedon Sharpe or Jaden Ivey or whoever is going to help you, at least from a like on the court and from an off the court standpoint of like, look at what the Knicks are building, that says something. It buys you more time. And then you don't have to be in a situation where you acquire a star who wants to leave somewhere, and then it's a ticking clock, right? A ticking clock. Like, at what point do you do something? Where do you, like, when do things start to happen? When do things get stale? It's hard. You have more flexibility, right? Because you can still package these players.
Yeah.
You can watch them develop. That is what you're selling to fans. You say the young core 4 times in the Rose letter, Leon. Like, that's an example of how you do that.
Flexibility is the name of the game. Well, no. Being a good basketball team is the name of the game. And then after that, it's flexibility, and more specifically, what kind of good basketball team are you? Because no one wants to be, I feel bad shitting on them because they had a really nice year for a lot of the year, but no one wants to be the Bulls, the situation that they're in. And granted, look, Pat Williams could still pop and like maybe something crazy happens, but like, you don't want to box yourself in. You want to be a good basketball team that is on the way up with a real cognizable ceiling. If you put another piece, like whatever, like where you could see it, you can kind of visualize it. Yeah, I think Sharpe's one to look for. And like, look, 3 teams had a chance to draft Luka Doncic and didn't. And that guy's going to be the greatest player of his generation. So like anything could happen. Who knows? We'll see. Man, you're making me excited for draft night. I'll say that.
Yeah, I hope so. But again, in conclusion, the change of approach here, right? Like, if you know me, you know that I have had a keen focus on like, well, the Knicks are positioned to trade for a star in 2023. It's something I've been very vocal about. And again, as I said, the Donovan Mitchell situation, and we will talk about him because I didn't see him as a top 10 player beforehand. Before the series, I don't see it after anyway. But it did get me thinking about, well, what if the long run is more just like, what if that big trade doesn't materialize, right? Like, what if the Knicks find a way to just keep digging through the draft, keep trying to take stabs, keep trading up if they have to? Both drafts, we've seen them try to trade up, right? They tried to trade up for Obi Toppin. They still got him at 8. They tried to trade up for Duarte. They didn't do it. They have an interest in these guys, and they try to hit doubles when they can't hit home runs. And now you're looking at a team that's, assuming they don't move up, knocking on the door of a top 10 draft pick. And there are ways to go about doing that and getting up there. And that's then how you try to sell it. And you try to develop this talent, and you try to have them be star talent down the line, but at worst, supporting pieces that can either be beneficial on cheaper contracts so you can sign the big kahunas, or You can just have them try to become stars. It's easier said than done. I know it is, but that's the approach you take. It is the long view, and it does factor in line with the fact that patience can be a virtue, and the Knicks are in line to just keep waiting. But we as fans, I mean, we'd love to see the Knicks be a contender tomorrow. Love it today. It's just not going to happen. It doesn't happen overnight. So if you're looking at the build and you talk about the young talent, and it's almost like, yeah, you can make the argument, why didn't the Knicks just tank? But I'm pretty sure that the logic for them is, look, we can find good talent in the draft because we hire really good people. But we also don't want to be a laughing stock, because if the Knicks were a perennial loser, then James Dolan would say, what are we doing here? I'm not seeing the results. I want you gone. And so it's also biding time, but it's doing it in a smarter way than just we'll bottom out and draft well.
It's freaking hard to draft a superstar. And you could be in the right place at the right time and still not do it. And yet, NBA history it tells us that if you do, like, it's really hard. Like if you go back and look at any final or the finals for the last, really all of history, but even if you focus on the last 20 years, either finals participant, team that won it or the team that lost, you're going to find, the LeBron thing is kind of funny because the Cavs went to the finals for 4 straight years. With a play, like they drafted a superstar, even though he wasn't, like, he took a detour before he went back. But like, it's really hard to go to the finals without a superstar on your team that you drafted. It just, it doesn't happen a lot. I know there are exceptions, but
there are a few exceptions.
There are a few exceptions, like 3, 4, maybe 5, if you want, depending on how you view certain players.
Over how long of a period of span, though? That's the thing. Like if we're talking about the exceptions, it's not like within the last few years. It's dating back to the Pistons.
I know
Wallace and Sheed and all those guys. It's, the lucky, like the Knicks in '99 catching fire.
It did.
It
happens. It happens.
But it's not sustainable, and we want sustainability.
I will just throw out one more time the point I brought up about Harden before, and in terms of might another player come along at a younger age and try to force his way out of town. Again, we have not seen it. We have not seen it yet, but I found good place to end. I found Zion's comments this week in the press conference when he was asked if he would sign I forget what actually the question was, but his answer was like, yeah, if I can't wait to extend it. I would love to extend here or something like that. And I would imagine his negotiation stance as his agent is going to be, okay, we'll take the max. That is our negotiation. And if it is anything other than that, the negotiation ends. And that's going to be a fascinating decision for New Orleans, whether they want to give the full max or whether they want to try to, I don't know. What do you do? If you don't offer that up, because he continues to be a guy that I have my eye on, because you listed him as in your up and coming category. If there's a guy that I personally would look at and be like, oh yeah, I could see him being on that superstar list within a couple of years, it's him. That's all. That's the only thing I want to say.
No, that's fair. And listen, how many times have we heard about empty promises? Like, I know Kyrie was a pending unrestricted free agent, but he said, I'd like to be here if you'll have me. And he skipped town. It's a little harder for Zion. And again, I will believe the qualifying offer accepted and then get unrestricted free agency route when he ain't. Right. So then it's a matter of how you do it. But I just, the one thing I'll end on is, again, you brought up how long can the Knicks afford to wait? And I think there's something to be said of like, when is there going to be movement? And then there's the player we're talking about next week in Donovan Mitchell. But then it's also the thought of like, well, what happens if the Jazz continue to hold on to Donovan Mitchell? And
which I think they will, by the way.
I agree, but I'm saying beyond next season, right? Like, what if the Jazz cling to him until he has 1 year remaining and you're the Knicks? And what other stars are there for you to really trade for in 2023 or 2024? Because we know the superstars, it ain't happening. But then what stars are really going to help elevate you and are available? And that's then where it gets fascinating, because it's like, can they afford to wait? Maybe. But also, what else is out there? Like, if people are upset that the Knicks haven't made a big trade yet, like, who would it have been since Leon Rose took over? James Harden was traded twice. One of those was for Ben Simmons, who I know a lot of people wanted. Would you really want James Harden?
No, there has not been any big player that has moved that the Knicks like missed that. I mean, there's also the things we don't know. Like, could they have gotten Dame last summer? Now, again, in retrospect, even if they could have, probably would have been a bad fucking idea given how his season went in Portland. Who knows? Maybe they revisit that conversation this summer. It wouldn't shock me. But in any case, this was really good. I really enjoyed this, and I don't think it's nuts to assume that the Knicks would again like to maintain flexibility. That it's incredible. The most inflexible organization because of how they had so badly boxed themselves in through multiple regimes, all of a sudden has been the organization with, like, if you had to pick one word that has been their organizational ethos for the last, I don't know, 4 years, 5 years, flexibility. And it seems like they want to continue to be flexible. So it should be interesting.
All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break to tell everybody about our good friends at Prize Picks. And Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. You can place a wager. We're doing overs and unders, and you can select anywhere from 2 to 5 players, and potentially that they'll hit the over or they're under on picks for the night. So just looking at tomorrow's games, guys, what are you thinking? So Jimmy Butler, 23.5 points. James Harden, 23.5 points.
I actually, it's funny because we have all done, grown accustomed to crapping on James Harden.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of love the Harden over with him beat out. Yeah.
So
I really do.
You liking it over? Like, do you think you'll have a monster game? Because let's go to points, rebounds, assists, and it's 40. So 25, 10, so 26, 10, and 5 gets the over.
I'm trying to think what I like more. I think I might like this a little bit more.
What do you got, Jeremy?
Tucker was on Trae Young and shut him down.
You think he can shut down?
Potentially. Mm-hmm. I mean, are we going to see the ball more in Tyrese Maxey's hands?
So
Harris going to take more of a role.
So let's go back to points then. And he'll at least get his points. Assists, that's nothing. That's out of his control. He doesn't have. And it's a one less player with him beat out. So let's stick with points for now.
That's fair. Okay.
Let's look in rebounds. Also, I should add actually, the way you could do it. Let's stick to one game here. Let's just do Sixers Heat.
Sure.
Here. And then assists. Let's look at Bam Adebayo's last 5 games. He has.
That's so cool that you could just show it right there.
Yep. So he's had less than 5 assists 3 out of 5 times, and his over. Wow. So he's hit over 5 over for the 3.5, I guess here. He's hit the over 3 times. And he barely hits it.
Yeah, I don't feel good about taking the under. I don't feel good about taking the over on this.
Okay. Let's see. Ayton, it's 2 assists. You think Ayton can hit 2 assists? That's a different game. Don't worry about it. Okay.
You know who I kind of do like? Different game though. Chris Paul. I mean, the dude's a superstar. All he has to do is get 10 assists.
One of the more automatic things which is funny because I took the over on Paul the other night and he hit the under of 8. He hit 8 and it was, I think 10 was the line and he hit under. Thank you, Chris Paul.
Superstar, Chris
Capital
Paul.
S. Yes. Capital S.
Let's go to rebounds.
Sure.
So 9.5 for Bam. You'd think he's their center. Of course, there's 10 rebounds out there for him to get. Well, Bam will have his 6 rebound games. He'll also have his 4 rebound games, which is not fun. So I would. This is a very strong stay away. Jimmy Butler, though.
6.5 is a nice number. I like 6.5. It's a good number. It's a good number to set it at. But again, it's like, if anything, again, with him beat out, I like Tobias Harris getting in the muck a little bit more.
Oh, so it's a good. You know what? That's actually a good call by John there. Look at this. His last 5 games, he's hit over 7.5, and his one under is 7. Yeah. So let's go Tobias Harris over.
Yeah, I like that.
Now we could stop here if we wanted to and just go over. And the value on a $20 wager would be 60 to win. So it's just, there's no additional odds. It's just you get both right. It's 3 times the play.
Can we put anything on future Nick Jalen Brunson tomorrow or no?
Unfortunately, there's no prop bet for that. For Jalen Brunson. Yes, that's what you meant. I thought you meant will Jalen Brunson be a Nick?
Exactly.
No, can he be a Nick tomorrow is what you're saying. Like, can we bet tomorrow. That? Jalen Brunson, you could do points, but again, we're going to stick to Sixers Heat. You can cross game. Actually, you know what, John? Brilliant idea on the fly. We can cross games if
Let's
we want
cross the streams.
So what are you liking about Jalen Brunson? 18 and a half points. It's 3 assists. And that's actually like the number is 3 assists. So, he's hit over consistently, or at least even throughout the playoffs. I think the safest thing is points. He has gotten his points consistently throughout the playoffs.
He has Chris Paul guarding Jalen Brunson in this series.
Or Mikal Bridges. That's a good point.
If they're going to, Mikal Bridges will probably spend more time on Luka, wouldn't he?
That's very true. Well, if they're switching,
yes. I kind of like the under
1-on-1.
You like the under?
I kind of like the under.
Under 18 and a half points.
I think I like the under. I think it might take Dallas a minute to get adjusted to playing a real defense.
John, what do you think? You're John. Jeremy, what do you think?
I don't hate it. Listen, I mean, again, the Jazz had a very porous perimeter defense. Point of attack was, taken advantage of consistently. And I think John's right. There's something to be said of like taking time to kind of figure it out and go through the motions. And game 1 goes to the Suns and they're able to have a better defensive experience.
Can we do one for the heart real quick? So Reggie Bullock.
Go for it.
Former Knick, 2.5 3-pointers made.
Big game player.
This has been Reggie Bullock throughout the playoffs.
Yes.
It's exactly 3. So I think he'll hit 3 tomorrow. Okay. Yeah. So we got the over.
It's also a shot you live with if you're Phoenix.
Exactly. Because it's not coming
shooter,
from,
but
yeah, absolutely. So then we have one more we can add to this. Now, just to give everybody a look, if you wanted to do a regular flex play, if you get 3 right, it's 1.5. So you would end up getting 30. So on a $20 bet, you get 30. If you get all 4, it's 5 times the value. So you get 100. On a power play, which is 10 times, a $20 bet gets you 200.
Hey.
So if you get all 4, which as we laid out might actually be possible, you get all 4.
I like that.
Can I throw another in there? Let's go to baseball real quick. So pitching outs.
Oh my God. See how many of these players I know who they are.
Jeremy, we get Jordan Montgomery going 6 innings tomorrow, 5 2/3 to be exact.
I think he could do it. Problem for Jordan Montgomery hasn't been pitching. It's been the Yankees hitting when he pitches.
Right. That's true.
So sure.
I'll show you guys later. But one thing I've been doing is either like low strikeout totals for strikeout guys, like Max Scherzer's in a flex play that I did the other night, or like you're telling me this guy can't go 6 innings is what I've been doing lately. So like I'm not doing Chris Bassett because they finally learned he goes 6 innings every time. And they were doing 16 and a half, 17 outs. Okay. And it's like, he needs to get through 6 innings. What's funny, the night that Tyler McGill was the starter for the no-hitter, his line was 5.5. Not 5.5. So he had to go 5 1/3. So it was 16 was the number. And he pitched 15 outs because they took him out after 5 because it was pitching.
I was today years old when I found out that Steven Matz was a pitcher for the St. Louis Cardinals.
Yes, the Mets played against him the other night and they knocked him out in the 4th inning. And then they got a bench clearing brawl in the 8th inning.
The hater and Andrew should pick the under for Steven Matz.
Yeah, he's actually been getting rocked lately. But
pick the under.
But Jeremy, you just watched the Royals. This is a get right matchup for him.
I did, but also the Yankees are a really good team.
Okay.
So
I would disagree.
That's fine. That's okay.
Shout out to our group chat.
Yeah. So you think, all right, you know what? Steven Matz under. I dig it. Okay. So if we wanted to, it's the same principle. The only option is the flex play. You get 3 right, you get a quarter. So you get like $8 back. You get 4 right, you double up. So you go from 20 to 40. And then obviously on 20, on all 5, you get 10 times what you wagered. Now, let me show you an example from the other nights, at least a couple nights ago. Actually, Monday, now I'm thinking about it, almost a week ago. Wow, this week went a while. So this is the closing game for the Nets and Celtics series. I got 4 out of 5.
Okay, that's good.
I took the over on Marcus Smart because he's just been hitting every over, especially in that series on points. So that I got. Jason Tatum, the near superstar Jason Tatum. Again, free throws. I thought 6.5, like the number kept going down too. It was like, oh, there's 7 free throws for him to get. And the number kept going to like, we actually are saying 6.5. We're actually saying 6. And he just got it every time. Kyrie Irving, man, we'll talk about not a superstar. Had a great game 1 and then hit the under on every point total that they had for the rest of the series. In fact, a lot of unders for Kyrie the rest of the series.
Tough break for a good guy.
Yes. So he hit the under on his point total. And then Max Scherzer, I had this in 4 different flex plays, over 7 strikeouts, and he hit 10 by the 6th inning.
Nice.
So Max Scherzer. And then Kevin Durant, the one game he decided to go off, I took under 40.5 points, rebounds, and assists, and he had obviously 55 that night.
Good job by you.
So that's an idea of an overall successful. I doubled my money that night. An overall successful Prize Picks wager. And if you also would like to be successful with Prize Picks, use promo code Film School and they will double your first deposit up to $100. So if you want to play with $100, they'll add in another $100. Just go to prizepicks.com, the website that we just showed you. Use promo code Film School. Prize Picks, daily fantasy made easy.
Andrew?
John?
Jeremy.
John.
Okay, so a couple things. First of all, I guess 3 things to be exact. First of all, I don't see Zion Williamson skipping anywhere at the moment, but that's a him thing. Hopefully that changes. Best of luck to you in New Orleans. Second thing, John, was Chris Paul ever a superstar? Okay, taking way too long. Okay, taking way too long.
Yes. I think
so what about him in the year of our Lord 2022 on a chance to win a title on a 64-win team after going 14-14 in a closeout game on the road? Makes him not a superstar?
I think he's what is he, 37? He's 36? Yes. Okay, I think he has to pick his spots a little bit more now.
What does that mean?
I just think he's a little older, and I think he has to pick his spots a little bit more.
A year younger than LeBron James.
How's everything?
And LeBron James is the most freakish athlete maybe that's ever walked the planet
and missed the playoffs.
Yes, I understand that. My point is, if Chris Paul was at one point in time a superstar, which I think he was, like he's never been like a guy who's going to go out there and like dominate with usage. I'm trying to say, it would not surprise me if he like never had a usage rate over 25. But I want to look that up to be sure. I just think there were times in his career where he probably had it in him to just like dominate a playoff series. A guy's not a superstar if he is below a 20 usage rate, and he is below a 20 usage rate this year.
I think that's why he's the point guard, and he puts guys in better position to succeed. So because he's the ultimate example of a superstar point guard.
He had a 27 usage rate twice. He had a 25 usage rate one other time, and every time else has been below that. Like Magic Johnson. Like, I understand. What?
To interject, the usage rate. I hate to use assists per game as this kind of thing, but like he had 10.8 assists per game this year. Before that, it was 8.9, 6.7, 8.2, 7.9.
I understand,
9.2.
And that was a big part of what
is a better playmaker now, which makes him, at least in my mind, a superstar.
That was a big part. Yeah. That was a big part of what made Magic Johnson a superstar. John Stockton also dished a fuckload of assists. He was never a superstar. You know, I think Chris Paul is much closer to Magic Johnson than he is to John Stockton, to be very clear about that. But like Chris Paul had playoff series in his life where I'm just looking at it now, where he averaged 22.5 and 12 assists. 21.2, 10 assists, 25 and 10 assists, 24 and change and 6 assists. You know, like last year, Western Conference Finals is probably your best argument. He averaged 24 and 9. Series before that against Denver, the sweep, he averaged 25 and a half and 10 assists.
This is going to be the 10th year in his career where he will basically be top 6 in MVP voting.
Chris Paul?
Year. Yes.
Chris Paul's not going to be top 10 in MVP voting, I don't think.
I don't think Booker took his spot this year, Jeremy.
I think
like
Booker
last year, I think is the better argument for that. I mean, it was
last year.
But again, like if the conversation is that he's never been that, like this is someone who has consistently been. If you want to throw out this year, then go for it. We'll see what the voting results are. But that's still 9 times.
Yeah, my question was ever
2007, 2008. That's incredible.
Yeah,
that's
my
superstar.
My question was, has he ever? And you have not said yes yet.
I think he was, and now you're just making me. He's such. I would argue that Chris Paul is one of the 5 or so toughest players, at least in my lifetime, where to answer that question, superstar or not a superstar. To me personally, it's a really, really tough, because I think there's a part of me that's like, of course he's a superstar, and then there's another part of me that's like, nah, it doesn't pass the smell test, because he's not a superstar in the way we've become accustomed to viewing a superstar. Because he's not a guy who's going to go out there and like drop 45 usually, you know?
So just to close that loop, the minus, you're not a superstar if you have a minus 20, under 20 usage rate, right? That's the argument you're making? Because Magic did it 3 times in the 80s?
I think it's
2
really...
of which in years he won championships? So was Magic not the superstar and Kareem was?
No, Magic was a superstar.
Or was James Worthy the superstar because he was passing it to Worthy, therefore his usage rate was down?
I think it makes it very,
was it Michael
very,
Cooper
very difficult.
Or Spencer Haywood, played by Wood Harris?
Again, Magic is one of the more unique sorts in that he dominated games without having to score a lot of points.
When you're passing
Chris Paul
it to
a top
Kareem,
5 point guard of all time, John?
Yeah, of course.
Then why would he not be a superstar?
He's not a superstar.
Like if you're putting him as one of the 5 best in the position that he's ever played, that anyone's ever played, why is he not a superstar?
And since Stockton's in that convo, I think he's also a superstar.
Stockton's not.
I think.
John Stockton.
Are you a superstar if you have a statue?
I don't give a fuck.
I know. I was kidding. Yeah.
You know what? Maybe Chris Paul was. He was at one point. I can't put him there right now. That's so tough.
Look, I personally love that you have this standard. Whether I can make sense of it or not is not my prerogative, because it's your standard. It makes for a more interesting debate.
Listen,
I don't think it's not all that nonsensical. I just can't completely. It's your opinion, so I'm like, okay, I'm getting your opinion on it. It's like when Nas and Yash ask me about, is this guy a Hall of Famer? I'm like, no, and they then throw all these numbers at me, like, okay, no.
Using my own test, if like after this series that the Suns are about to play the Mavs, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we turn around and be like, yeah, Chris Paul outplayed Luka Doncic in this series, my first thought in hearing that would be like, well, yeah, but he didn't have to do anything close to what Luka had to do. And I think that has a lot to do with it, where at one point in time, Chris Paul like had to do everything for his teams, and he was a superstar at that time. Now, Chris Paul gets to be on a team that I think everybody agrees has the best top to bottom rotation in the league. He also gets to play with another guy who both of you guys seem to think is a superstar. So like he doesn't need to do everything. And doesn't that have to factor in?
So he was a superstar.
That's the answer to the question. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
I don't think it needs to be head to head that determines one guy is a superstar and the other, maybe not. Like, that's why I say there are levels to this, because Luka Doncic to me is way up there in superstar talent. And I still think Chris Paul is too, but he's not way up there. He's down here, but there's still plenty of room.
He's so unique.
How does that matter?
So like Allen Iverson,
he's the top
right?
5 point guard of all time.
Yeah, but it's just such a unique discussion. Like some guys throughout NBA history.
Where are you going with that with Allen Iverson, by the way?
Like Allen Iverson's a superstar.
Okay, yeah.
But Trae Young, no, I'm kidding.
No, but like Allen Iverson, like even for his time, was a brutally inefficient player, like incredibly inefficient player. But he had a certain something about him.
I just got to be honest. I don't think for your argument, John, you can ever include playoff performance as a success because like we've thrown multiple one-on-one examples where superstars were outplayed by players that you perceive are not superstars.
Like anything could happen in a game,
right?
Or even
so then you're really, your argument is, you know it when you see it, and
that is my argument.
Your gut is like, when I see it, that's a superstar. Which I, as somebody who argues against the Hall of Fame for baseball, for certain people, I respect it. Like there is a playoff series from 3 years ago where LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and Jimmy Butler shared the court, and I didn't know who the best player was. Like that is a thing that happened. You can say the bubble, well, fine, but like Jimmy Butler, there were moments where it's like, oh, I have no idea if he's the best player in this series or not, which we all don't think, right. He played like a superstar.
Played like a superstar for that series. Yeah.
If he's not a superstar, then what is the definition? And for you, you know, when you see it. And I guess Jeremy and I have a little more lax. I personally think this is the most talent the league has ever had. So I think saying there's 14 superstars is a perfectly fine thing to say.
It doesn't have to be a cutoff at 7 or 8 because of the immense amount of talent that we're seeing. It's just other guys are getting snubbed. But like there is a you know it when you see it factor, but you can also widen the pool because you have the old guard and the new guard and then the guys in between. And it's unlike anything I think we've truly ever seen. There've obviously been old guards and new guards, but the crossover, it's just the talent, as you're saying, Andrew, it's so massive that it's just different now. It's different than it was 10 years ago.
I'm also on this YouTube kick lately where I'm rewatching games from the 60s. Don't ask me why. Okay, maybe it's just
that's awesome. I love that
break from wedding planning at this point.
That's great.
But I rewatched the Game 7 from 1963 or 64, whichever, the first of the Game 7s between the Celtics and Lakers, and like Don Nelson's shooting form might be the worst I've ever seen in my life, and he's starting for the Boston Celtics, and I'm just looking at the screen like Julius Randle would dominate. Like if you put him in this series and like, all right, now subbing Julius Randle, we would regard him as the greatest player of all time because of how much he dominated the court that night. And I just look at the league now, and it's like Julius Randle's probably the 100th, 120th. If you go by usage, it's even worse than that, or high volume. It's even worse than that. So I think it actually, to the amount of talent the league has right now, is appropriate to say, oh yeah, we got like a dozen superstars in this league.
I say 8, but that's fine.
That's fine. Again, you know it when you see it, even if we don't see it. So
I'm going through. Yeah, I'm looking at the list. Dominique Wilkins is a tough one too.
When you said Ewing was the first time I was like, oh, this is different. Like I kind of want to know who you consider a superstar then, if a guy that was on the best player. Like
I'll give you another one. Derrick Rose, unequivocally a superstar before he got hurt.
For a year and a half, yeah. Or for 2 years. Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Do you then view Pat more similarly to how we seem to view Jimmy Butler?
Yeah, Pat played against Hakeem and went head to head for a series, and if someone makes a substitution in Game 7, then he's got a championship over Hakeem too.
So is it maybe like he's not a superstar, but he is a super star kind of thing? Like he's the one guy who's below, like he's next in line, but he can't quite get into the club.
He's a star that plays superb.
Like I'm looking at the list of players throughout history. I mean, I don't know. In my mind, I definitely don't think there's 50 superstars in NBA history. I'm wondering if I think there are 30. Do I think there are 35?
Oh, that's fun. This is a Patreon. No, this is a Patreon pod officially. John, we're getting your superstars ever now. Okay.
I mean, listen, I'm
Jason Kidd's a superstar.
I'm not saying all 75 guys that were named are superstars, but like
they're not.
Right.
Wasn't James Worthy on the fucking list?
Yes.
Right.
So was Ray Allen. So, Ray Allen was or wasn't? Ray Allen was on the 75.
Ray Allen was on the top 75.
Yeah. So, and you don't think he is?
No.
Yeah. Reggie Miller, you don't think he is? So there are superstars.
Man, Reggie Miller's another one that's so hard.
So there are superstars and there are guys that can play like superstars, but aren't superstars.
Yeah, Reggie Miller had a lot of superstar moments. I know that.
Jeremy, we're like, this makes no sense.
I feel like the Seinfeld gif.
Yeah, just no enough internet for today. You guys want to do the quickest producer's corner of all time?
Sure.
Okay, because that superstar slide, Jeremy might have some legs, is all I'm going to say. The reaction, be prepared. And I may have to force you to go on Twitter, John. So I went back and forth with how to incorporate the week that was, because there's no Knicks news. And for the rest of the Big Apple, there was some pretty big sports news. The Yankees have won 9 in a row. At the moment, the Mets are up 6-4. Dear God, please stop pitching to Kyle Schwarber, Buck Showalter. I thought I could incorporate some type of no-hitter trivia, but there just isn't a correlation between no-hitters and basketball. Side note, I told John this, Jeremy, but here's how a conversation Friday morning went for me. Me to my fiance. Want to go to the Mets game tonight? My fiance in return. Actually, it's going to be cold. Let's go to a movie instead. Me in return. Okay, sure. Mets pitch a no-hitter on Friday. I'll let you guys know if the wedding is still on. Instead, I decided to go with some draft trivia because the NFL draft happened this week. Those who joined us on playback got to see me react live to the night the Jets and Giants had. Those who want to rewatch those reactions, as well as Benji, John, and myself, react to the 3 playoff games that happened, were amazing. They are available on Knicks Film School's Patreon. Just sign up for the Melo, Monroe, or Ewing tier. The Jets and Giants had 2 first-round picks going in, and the Jets ended up trading in to get a third. But I wondered if you guys knew the amount of times in the NBA draft history, how many times the Knicks have had 2 picks in the first round. Obviously, that
2?
Yes, 2. At least 2. Obviously, the NBA draft being a little different because there's only 2 rounds. Or at least there now are only 2 rounds. There used to be as many as 8 way back in the day. But if I said over under 4 times that they've had at least 2 first round picks, what would you say?
Over.
Okay, over under 5.
I'm gonna go ahead and say 7 or 8.
So what's the answer?
I don't know. I'll go 8.
Jeremy?
I mean, I know they had 3 in 96.
Yeah, I'll go 7.
It is 7. Well done, Jeremy.
Nice job.
Okay, so I'm going to go through all 7 years. You tell me the 2 or 3 players that were drafted and what picks they were. So 2021, who were the 2 picks that they made? Because they did technically have 2 picks that they made.
Oh, we're doing this?
Yes. So who are the
Kai
2 players that the Knicks
Kai
took?
Jones and
Who was Jeremy?
Quentin Grimes and Kai Jones.
Quentin Grimes was technically the Clippers.
I was about to say it wasn't his.
All right.
Who was taken at 21 and then they traded?
James Johnson.
Keon
Johnson. That was 20. Yeah.
Keon Johnson. Yes.
No, James.
But
was that the other
Knicks
pick?
also traded
Johnson?
from 20. Wait, was
Kai Jones is the other guy. It's Kai Jones and Keon Johnson.
Okay, great. So we got those 2.
Okay.
because it was 21 to 25. It wasn't 21 to 23 to 25, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. 23 is the next year in which they had 8 and 23. Who were the 2 picks? Jeremy first.
And then
Obi Toppin at 8. And who went at 23 that they then traded to eventually take Emmanuel.
Was it Bolmero?
Yes, it was
Leandro Bolmero.
Yeah.
Okay. Then 2005, they took 2 players.
David Lee and
who's the
Channing,
8th pick?
Channing
Frye, friend of the pod, Channing Frye.
And then they traded for the pick that was Nate Robinson afterwards.
Yes, exactly. 1996, 18, 19, and 21. Let Jeremy try to answer this.
Was one of them McCarthy?
Yes. Walter McCarthy with the 19th pick.
I can't remember what was it? 18.
Syracuse.
18 and 21. 18 is as John mentioned, was from Syracuse.
Well, I know that one of these picks came from Miami.
Right? Maybe I didn't write down.
It was the Riley. It was the Riley pick. Yeah.
Was that McCarty?
That might be. I didn't write down what the trade compensation was, but yeah, these are listed as 3 Knicks picks, though.
I feel like wasn't one of them a white guy?
No, all 3.
No.
Then I know it wasn't Kiki Vandeweghe, obviously, because
you're about 10. You're about 15 years off.
Yeah.
Well, I was also a little over 1.
I was gonna say you were born in 95. 94, 95? Okay, so this is you're 1 year old for this. You're okay.
I actually don't remember who it is other than John Wallace. Who's the other guy?
John Wallace, Walter McCarthy, and McCarty, excuse me, and Dante Jones. 1994, they had the 24th pick and the 26th pick.
Charlie Ward.
Charlie Ward's 26. 24 is.
Wasn't alive.
He is going to win.
He's going to win Coach of the
NBA this year.
Monty Williams.
Monty Williams.
Yeah,
Yes.
Monty Williams.
1979. They had 3 picks: 3, 9, and 21. Is there any chance you guys know who this is?
I'll guess one.
Who?
Was that the Bill Cartwright year?
Bill Cartwright. Yes.
That
This
was
is the
gonna be
third
my
pick in the
guess.
draft, and then you got 9 and 21.
Toby Knight? I don't know.
No. Do you have any guesses, Jeremy?
It would have been Bill Cartwright.
Okay. So at 9, they hold on.
At I'm looking up a
9,
name.
They took someone named Larry Demick. Never heard of him, but
I was 3 years off. I just looked up Lonnie Shelton, but that was 1976. Anyway,
so 1979
Second
with
round
the
pick.
third pick, they took Bill Cartwright. With the 9th pick, they took Larry Demick out of Arizona, and with the 21st pick, they took Sly Williams out of Rhode Island.
Okay.
Congrats, you made it to a pod in 2022. And then this is a tricky one. In 1965, this is the last one. They technically only had 1 pick, but they took somebody in the territorial draft back
in 65.
In 65. So do you guys know what the territorial draft is?
Do you want me to explain it?
Jeremy, you know what it is?
It had to do with location.
Basically, yeah.
The players in your area.
Back then, because the league was so unpopular. Actually, John, go ahead, explain it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it was about 20 years this existed. Teams that they wanted to, build up the popularity of the league. So if I forget what the mileage was, but if you were within
50.
a certain, it was 50 miles.
Yeah.
Within 50 miles of where a guy went to college, you got the rights to that player. And in 1965, I believe the Knicks were 1 mile closer to Princeton, New Jersey than Philadelphia.
Yes.
So they got the rights to a guy who would go on to spend a couple of years playing overseas and now sees his number hanging in the rafters.
Yes, Bill Bradley is the name of the guy. And then with the
I don't know who the other guy is.
The other pick, they took Dave Stallworth.
Oh, that was the year they took Dave Stallworth. Okay.
Yes. A lot of names I didn't realize were on the territorial draft.
Oh my God.
Will Chamberlain on the territorial draft, 1959.
Territorial draft was a big fucking deal for a very long time.
Yeah. Oscar Robertson, territorial draft. Dave DeBusschere, territorial draft. 1965 is the last one, by the way. So this is
that was that I know. Yeah. That was the last year of the territorial.
Because they were like, oh, this is stupid. Let's actually do a draft. So
my grandmother actually saw Wilt play in high school.
Really?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Nice.
From Philly. So
I won't curse her too much because I like you, and therefore I won't hate your grandmother for being from Philly.
Thank you. I mean, she was a Red Sox fan. Not.
Oh, even worse.
The A's went, to Kansas City, and then she needed a team, and she later moved to the New England area. So
Mets are up 7-4 on the Phillies now. So I'll take the victory against Philly tonight.
Wait a minute. Phil Jackson wasn't a first round pick. He was a second round pick.
He might have been their only first round pick that year. Again, this was 2 first round picks.
No, Jackson and unless I'm really off here, Jackson and Frazier were.
Let me look. Hold on. 1960 what? This is Walt Clyde Frazier. Phil Jackson was the 17th pick of the draft, which is the second round.
Yeah. Not enough teams.
Frazier went 5th.
Yes.
And then Jackson went, 17th.
Yep. In a 10-team league. Yes.
No, 12 teams.
12
there
teams
were 12
at the time.
Okay.
12 teams at the time.
How about this for a draft? Second pick in 1960. We could end after this. 1967 draft. First overall pick, Jimmy Walker out of Providence. Scored 11,000 points in his career. Second overall pick, Earl Monroe. 1 pick ahead of Walt Frazier at 4 to Detroit. Sonny Dove played 57 NBA games, scored 398 points. 7th pick that year, a gentleman by the name of Pat Riley. And then, 17th overall, second round, Phil Jackson.
Trivia.
Crazy times.
Look at us going back to the 1960s for these pods.
I love this shit.
I do too. Listen,
this stuff is great.
Shout out to Winning Time. I got so enamored with how inaccurate the show is that I went back to watch the real thing, and now it's got me on this kick of old basketball.
Look at this. The Knicks in the 5th round that year selected LIU's own Barry Leibowitz, who played 0 minutes in the NBA.
Oh, Jimmy Walker. Do you know his famous son?
Jimmy Walker's famous son.
I'm pretty sure that's it. No. I believe his son is Jalen Rose. Let me double check that.
That sounds correct. That is correct.
Because I'm not going to get too into the weeds on this, but I'm pretty sure Jimmy Walker never knew Jalen Rose. So, yep, children, they're Jalen Rose. They talk about this on the Fab 530 for 30. The part of Jalen's, the chip on his shoulder is that he had a professional ball player that played in the NBA and did not know him. And here he was a scout and a prospect and had to do it kind of on his own. It's also why he has an axe to grind against Duke, which I respect, because they don't look at inner cities for their talent.
I'm looking at Barry Leibowitz's basketball reference page, by the way, if I seem a little distracted.
I wonder if he has the same shooting form as Don Nelson is my question. If all of them just kind of went to the Don Nelson School of Shooting back in the day. I'm begging you, if there's one thing you take from this long producer's corner, everybody, go look up Don Nelson shooting a free throw in the 1969 NBA Finals and then wonder why there's such a dismissal to the Russell Chamberlain era. That is all I ask you to do.
I just think it's cool. What were you going to say, Jeremy?
No, just wrap up whenever you're ready, John.
I was just going to say, I think it's cool that Barry Leibowitz was the backup point guard for the 1967-68 ABA champs Pittsburgh Pipers featuring superstar Connie Hawkins.
Superstar? Connie Hawkins?
Oh, superstar. Unfortunately, by the time he got to the NBA, his superstar days were just about over.
Was Jerry West a superstar? Was Bill Russell a superstar? Was Elgin Baylor a superstar?
Thank you, Jeremy Cohen, for today's wonderful presentation.
Was Don Nelson a superstar?
Star in your role. That was Don Nelson. He was a star as a eccentric coach. That's the best I could do. Who's a superstar, Andrew? You're a superstar.
I'm a galactic star. Okay.
And Praz. Was it Praz?
Huh?
Ghetto superstar? No. It's a Praz.
The way over my head on that one.
What?
DJ Mac over here.
Ghetto superstar? Oh, come on.
Jeremy,
do you know that?
Jeremy, do you know what he's talking about?
I know if I heard it, but it's not ringing any bells.
Maya?
Oh, then just say Maya. Do you know how long it's been since I've heard that song? Probably back when you were being a DJ.
Yeah, it's Prize. I was crazy.
Yes, it was.
Man. And ODB?
Well, I know who ODB is, John. Yes. The guy from the Dave Chappelle skit.
Jesus. All right.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you next week.